and you can shoot me a message. Maybe I can, help. I don't really use this part of the technology. Oh, there he is. Okay, he's on here now. Can you hear me, Norman?
I can. I can. Can you hear me okay?
All right, let me put my earphone in so that I can hear you because I got my Bluetooth turned on. Speak again. Let me see if I got you.
Can you hear me
Say
now?
something else. Ah, yeah. Now you're like that Verizon guy. Can you hear me
Yeah.
now? Can you hear me
Yeah.
now? Yeah, yeah. I gotcha. I gotcha. Hey, so how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. We're having our Missouri false summer slash fall slash back to summer slash, here in Oklahoma, where we went to college, and here in Missouri,
Right.
the weather kind of bounces back and
It,
forth. And
it's very
um,
deceptive.
oh yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
yes.
And every state, I guess, has it a little bit, but Missouri can be that way, where during the change of either fall or spring, you could have an 80-degree day and then drop back down to 40 or even in the 30s, sometimes for at least a
I
period of time
bet
in there.
yeah, we're probably about 60 maybe here today, and it was, and it very recently it's been 100, so it's
Yep.
crazy. It's the
Yeah.
same here. It's just nuts, man. You don't know whether to wear a jacket or what. I end up taking one with me that I end up wearing part of the day, but then I peel it off if it blasts back up to 100 because I'm a wimp, man. That 100-degree stuff just melts my brain.
Oh yeah.
I lose
Yeah.
my joy.
Yeah. I can't.
Hey,
I
so
can't handle the extremes anymore. I guess we're getting old. So.
Definitely, yeah. I was when it gets super cold, which it will here in a bit, probably 13 weeks, I'll be crying because it's too cold and I got to shovel snow and stuff because God just apparently can't make me happy. I'm just a bitter individual. But hey, I wanted to talk to you today. We're this series is I've called it lunchtime live because I punched out at work here and I'm doing it in my office. As you can see, this is my glamorous office. We've got all our supplies here, and I work here, of course, as a custodian, and which really is my basic job is to clean up after the vomit comet hits. So
Yeah.
if that kind of thing happens and I get a call over the intercom, it says code pink. Code pink means I got to break out some absorbent and go clean up that. Unfortunately, you're a father of a large family. You have 10 kids. I have 9 kids because I'm a slacker and didn't know how to be. I don't know how to be an overachiever like you. But one of the things that happens when you have a large family is you develop a cast iron
Oh
stomach.
yeah.
So I'm the one that cleans up the vomit comet at my house, and
Yep.
it doesn't bother me. But there are people here, most of the people that I work with, it's a sensitive thing for them, and it
Yep.
it really puts them in a tailspin. So the beautiful thing for me is I've got job security because of that cast iron stomach. So there is an advantage to being the father of a large family is that
Yeah.
I can be a custodian anywhere, anytime, man, and you can't gross me out. So
Yeah.
yeah, feeling
Yeah.
feeling good about that job security.
And
Yeah. So what are you doing today? You're doing counseling today too, aren't you? When you're not on your lunch break, and
well,
is that
yeah,
right? Or
yeah. So actually, today is going to be a fairly heavy day. I'm the clinical director at a boys' home here in Missouri, and then which is just a part-time job. It's a small boys' home, but then I'll be seeing a few kids today, and then I'll be going over to the court district. This county is the head of the court district of several counties, and so there's a juvenile detention center, and I'll be going over and visiting some of the kids there this evening, and then seeing actually a couple of people from the streets. And as we talked about on the phone a couple of days ago, I don't do a lot of street counseling right at the moment, but I think that I'm
right?
going to focus more on. Actually, I think I'm going to focus more on men, which I think is a
But
underserved.
huge
That's kind of the
need,
direction
huge
that.
need.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. Yeah, I think I'll head that direction simply because that's kind of the direction it fell. But some of my street counseling, but I think also that's just what is needed.
Yeah,
So, I think there's not that there's not enough counselors out there for men or women, but I think that counselors specifically for men going through some of the stuff that we've had to learn in life, we've talked about. This is the first time we've been on in kind of a group conversation, but we've talked over the years about
oh
kind of not having a father in our life until
yes,
we were adults, and some other stuff that we had to learn. So what I tell them that has helped me a little bit in counseling, just because I kind of know and even our subject today about how to kind of jumpstart your life to make, fix things when things holistically are kind of broken. What do you do?
Right.
Which we
Sure.
talk about today. So yeah, that's kind of my day. Today's sort of a fairly busy day, but so
Tell them what I tell you in almost every phone conversation we have. There's a phrase that I tell you
yeah,
about the rest of our life. Tell them what that
yeah,
is.
we're gonna make the rest of our life the best of our life, and
Right.
uh, and I think that's a good phrase because I think that whether it happens at, and I know that females go through this too, but again,
Sure.
as brothers we talk a lot, but that I think a lot of men at different times in their life, especially, or people who are involved in ministry who get disillusioned with it later on, or start having family problems, or start having marital problems. You begin to believe that life is sort of over. That
Yeah.
if things don't work out, or you can't stay in the ministry, or you need to go a different direction, or your kids are acting up, or whatever is sort of making life begin to go into a tailspin, then you've got to figure out a way to jumpstart life and make life head in a better direction. And
Right.
one of the things that I've noticed about doing that for myself personally, as we've talked about, but also what I've noticed about guys and gals that I've counseled on the streets, and even kids, because they can kind of have this crisis where they feel like life is over and they need to restart
Sure.
stuff, is that like the old Alcoholics Anonymous statement is, the only thing you need to change is everything. So you
That's
need to kind
good.
of
Yeah.
reassess every area of your life and start holistically, um, kind of throwing some things away, picking some stuff up, and some of the changes may be in areas that are bizarre, that they're not where you would think. And what I mean by
Right.
that is that sometimes people will need to, it may be something as simple as, their kind of life has gotten so busy they can't make a lot of changes in their life. They got to take care of family. They got to work a certain amount of time, but they need to pick up some sort of a hobby,
Okay.
self care, where they need to, take some dream that they had, about something in the past. I've always wanted to learn to sail a sailboat. I don't know,
Sure.
and then take that and actually then do what you can do to move that forward. You know,
Sure.
so yeah,
You could start
maybe
as
the
simple
rest.
as watching videos on how to sail,
Right.
taking an online course on it, checking if there's some local sailing group or something that you might go to, kind of thing. Is that what you mean?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think for me, when I've gone through those, crisis times, it's like, well, in crisis time, number one is that when people are going through crises in their life, just generally speaking, the first thing they need to do is, survival mode is just doing what you need to do to get through the day in an effective way. And what I mean by that is, of
Okay.
course,
Yeah.
staying away from, not, I'm sorry, but drinking heavily shouldn't probably be on that list. Getting
Right.
through the
Right.
day
Yes.
effectively, in the sense that you stop worrying about trying to figure out how to fix the future, and in crisis mode you have no choice but to go, okay, what is the bare minimum sort of I need to do to get through today? But that's
Okay.
only crisis mode, because then sooner or later, in order for you to be whole and healthy and well, and kind of do away with some of the anxiety and the depression and some of that other
Right.
stuff, is you're going to have to kind of start rebuilding your life. And so
Right.
rebuilding your life is going to be along the lines of, what I've learned and we've learned, I tell people in counseling, is sort of, rethinking where you're going, what are you doing, what direction you're heading. Do you need to make some major changes in jobs or ministry or something along those lines? But also some things like hobbies, or getting back your passion for something, learning something new,
Okay.
or along those lines, which really helps to give. You got to have some reason to you got to have something to look forward to in the future, even if it is a
Sure.
simple little, even if it's something that may
Yeah.
seem silly to somebody else. Learning to fly fish, I don't know,
And, yeah.
um,
What's purpose? It speaks to the issue of meaning and purpose. If you're
right,
The old saying is, if your why is big enough, the how will take care of itself. And so,
right,
if one of the things that I found, I went through a period of Great Depression probably 10 years ago, and it was a prolonged season, and I had to redesign my life. I stepped
right,
away from pastoral ministry because that was what God was calling me to do at that time, and I've moved. Now I'm doing an online ministry as well as ministry in a local church, but not as a pastor in a local church.
right,
And and one of the things that I had to find was I had to reacquire a passion in my life.
right,
And so the passion for me right now is this online ministry. What we're doing is that's a passion for me, and and that somehow uh, uh, allows your life to have a buoyancy to it, a resilience to it. So that
right,
if your purpose is big enough, then the suffering, whatever suffering happens to come into your life, is minimized because your purpose is big. That's how come those
mm,
football players that get paid millions of dollars to play football, they get hit by other guys that weigh 300 pounds and can run almost as fast as an Olympic runner in the 100-yard dash, and they get hit like a freight train. But the reason they're able to keep playing and moving forward is they have a big enough why to cross the finish line, to cross the goal line and make the score, so that it's almost like they don't feel the pain. It's not
right,
that they don't, but it's almost like they don't, or they play hurt because there's a big enough why in the situation. And so one of the things that if you're going to have the rest of your life be the best of your life, you have to develop a big enough why. What's your purpose?
right, right, right. Amen. Yeah, and that needs to be for, we do a lot of the whole goal of our ministry here is to help encourage people who do church work as well as just give out the
Sure.
gospel generally. But, and so that's very important when somebody has gotten burnt out in ministry, because as you know, the
Sure.
truth is ministry burnout. The 90-10 or kind of 20-80 principle applies to so many areas of life that,
Yeah.
20% of the people are doing 80% of the work, and the 80% are doing
Yeah. Yeah.
20% of the work in a church, or maybe
Sure.
worse than that. 10% of the people are doing 90% of the work, and 90% of the people are doing 10% of the work or less. That principle, which is pretty spot on, of what's
Yeah.
going on, and so workers get get really blasted. And if you've been a church worker long enough, you will have worked yourself half to death to try to do
Absolutely.
God's will, only to have the church, people in the church, somebody blast you, your own family,
Because you're not
get
doing enough.
fired because you're
Yeah.
not doing enough.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and and that can create a huge bitterness for people in church work, and a disillusion. But this doesn't have to
Oh
apply
yeah.
to ministers or people who are church workers, but
Could be anybody.
it can be
Sure.
anybody who's out there and they're tired of their work or their job. I think that God, meant for us to be very dynamic. We've talked
Okay.
about this, that life is meant to be very moving and changing, but a lot of times we get into the
Sure.
rut of things staying exactly the same. So the road kind of
Yeah.
changes. We've grown up and changed a little bit, and we see life from a different perspective. And so we walked off God's path, and we're kind of stumbling through the woods and over the boulders and whatever, because we didn't make the turn back there that He wanted us to make, because change is hard and difficult and
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
um,
We don't. We,
and so we don't make those changes, and therefore we get in that, just in general, you can kind of get, let alone if you have a major life crisis where you got rebellious kids or marital problems, or
right.
other health problems or other issues that might be affecting your life, that's causing you to be disillusioned and embittered. It's true that even in general, you need to be kind of continue to grow and
Absolutely.
change
Yeah.
and learn. I mean, good grief, you and I have talked, and we haven't had a way to do this as we would have liked to, that we're doing today. But we've talked over the last couple of years. I have learned more. Sadly, I've learned more probably from 50 to 60
Yeah.
than I did.
Yeah.
Oh, this is hard to say, Gene, in a half a century. Okay,
Agreed.
and I learned a lot
Agreed. Same.
in the first half century. That's kind of depressing that we're
Sure.
talking about half centuries here, buddy. Uh, but
Yeah.
in the first,
Yeah.
in the first half century, I didn't learn as much as I did in the last, and grown a lot in the last 10 years. And
Right.
had the biggest challenges of my life in the last 10 years. So, I think there's this idea that you kind of like with schooling that you get out of high school or college and then school's over. But no, I think on almost every level, spiritually, intellectually, socially, and almost every level, growth should continue to be happening regardless of your age. You should be learning new stuff
Absolutely.
at 70 or 80.
Yeah.
And if you're not, to use the old-fashioned phrase, if you're not, you're probably not right with God. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
in completely sort of in God's will if you're not growing and changing and learning new stuff. And so if stagnant.
Curiosity. Yeah. Curiosity is probably one of the most profound state changers that you'll have, whether if you're in depression or anxiety or anything. One of the things that you can do to shift your emotional state almost immediately is to become curious. Because
Yes.
when you become curious and you start getting curious about what do I need to learn from this situation? How can I improve in this situation? What kind of tools and resources are available to me in this situation? And you start thinking with that sort of a mindset, with a problem solving, curious mindset, man, that is powerful. That shifts your state almost immediately
Yes.
because the depressive state or the anxious state is so powerful. A lot of times we feel like we can't get out of it.
Right.
But when you start thinking about, get curious about what you can learn in this and just sort of follow after that curious pursuit, man, pretty quick you'll be out of the depression and anxiety.
Absolutely. And the other thing is that we tend to look at our present circumstances and assume that's the way things are going to stay. So, if
Right.
you're rich today, you'll be poor tomorrow. If you're poor tomorrow, you could be rich the next day. If
Sure.
you're,
Changes.
life tends to,
Change.
yeah, yeah. And so if you look at the momentary circumstances, then you'll also, and you kind of get into self, and you're only into yourself, and you're only into your problems, and you're kind of, one person said, worshiping your problems, then
Yeah.
you are not growing. Some things you kind of got to leave up to God because they're not going to change, or they're not going to change quickly. You
Right.
can't change
Right.
another person in a relationship. You can't necessarily
Nope.
change on the short term, kids who are not doing what they're supposed to be
Nope.
doing, or you can't, we can only change us. And coming into
Yeah.
counseling, the only person that could change in counseling is the kind of one of the counseling mantras would be that the only person that can change is the person in the room. Okay, they can make different changes.
Right.
Now, they're making changes will change a bunch of other dynamics because other people will change because they're changing. It's going to happen, when they're
Sure.
looking at life from a different perspective. So you've got to work on yourself and set out some goals, and figure out what God wants you to do with your life so that you can what the new thing God wants you to
Yeah.
do in your life, I should say,
Sure.
because you've probably been doing stuff
It's
that was
it's the
God's will, but now you need to move on
yeah.
to,
He's
uh,
changing to something
right, right.
else.
Right, and always be growing. I think the thing about the make the rest of your life the best of your life here, I would say the main phrase is, if you're not growing, something's wrong. Okay,
Right.
at whatever stage in life, that something's changed, and you can go, well, you don't understand, I don't have any money, I don't, I can't go do this hobby. Well, the truth is that it doesn't matter if you decide you want to be a, brain surgeon, even if it's never going to happen. That doesn't mean you couldn't study biology, and I'm being kind of silly here, but you couldn't study
Sure. But
biology
yeah,
or read books on it
you
because
could
it's
move
just of interest to
toward it.
you, and you're still you're at least learning something, because the learning process is really what's making you alive.
Yeah.
So, getting some sort of a learning going on, and growth going on is the part of getting you out of that rut. And I don't
How
care how
one
old
guy
you are.
Yeah. How one guy describes it is he calls it improving your schema. And what he means by schema is your set of tools, abilities, attitudes, and he said all of your life, what you're after is improving the tools that you have, the attitudes that you have, the abilities that you have, so that whatever situation you find yourself in, you can live your best life in that situation
Right,
because you're
right,
improving your schema.
right,
And what you're talking about before is another way to phrase it is it's the locus of your focus. So as long as I'm focused on changing myself and making myself the best version of Gene that I can be, that's going to, as long as I'm focused on that and the locus of my focus isn't on others. If my locus of my focus is on others, then I'm going to be perennially frustrated because I can't make them change.
right,
But if the locus of my focus is myself, then I have 100% control over Gene Kissinger. Nobody can make me sad. Nobody can make me mad. No, nobody can do. I choose my response to every situation that I'm in. And when I'm thinking that way, that gives all the power to me, not to my circumstances. And so
right,
that's a powerful thing.
right. And then the other thing I think that happens is that we have, and we've talked about this before the last couple of years, is this idea that we begin to have expectation that
Oh
life
yeah.
or other people should be a certain way, and therefore we
Yeah.
get unhappy because they
When they're
are
not.
not, life is not that way, you know.
Yeah.
And at the moment, so you're not living in the, you know, in the here and now. I remember reading this is years ago, but I read a book by I think it was Commander Jim Mulligan, and he was in the Hanoi Hilton with John
McCain.
McCain. Yeah, yeah, and so that in his book on what they did there that was really interesting was that you know, they had nothing. They had dirty old clothes, and they were starved to
Yep.
death and tortured, and you know, it was, I mean, literally they had nothing. But those guys in there learned a kind of a form of a Morse code, and
Yep.
they taught classes, they played chess through the walls, they had church services, they prayed,
Right.
they in their mind went into a place where they learned to be better at golfing and chess and other things, because they,
Yep.
you know, they use their mind to and
Improve.
improve their game just by their thinking when they got out and they went and did these things, because they lived the rest of their life the best of their life, even in a, you know, a stinking purgatory, you
Sure.
know, and they were better people because they kept growing, and probably in that case they would have to either do it or die. So, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
sometimes maybe when we're forced into super hard life crisis sort of circumstances, or life is in a deep rut, that is what we need to make changes. Because I hope all humans maybe would say this about ourselves if we're honest, but I will certainly say it about me because I'm lazy. So
Me too.
if
Yeah.
I don't have to, you
Yeah.
know, yeah, you
Yeah.
know, I kind
Yeah.
of usually have to have a little bit of crisis in my life before I'm going to, you know, make some changes. You know, it's got to be, you
Let me
know,
give you two sentence sermons that are about what you just said. One is two men looked through prison bars. One saw mud, the other saw stars.
right,
So the locus of the focus of the guys in the prison, one was looking down and one was looking up. Your Hanoi Hilton example is they were looking up, they were improving their trajectory.
right.
The other one, let me see what I can't remember the other one. I had another one about what you're saying. But anyway, it is literally the battlefield of life is your mind. It tell me what you said that prisoner that you dealt with said
Yeah,
about getting
I
your
gotta,
mind right.
yeah, they,
What?
yeah, the prisoners, and when I worked in corrections, they would say, you know, I need to get my mind right, you know, I need to keep my mind right. And he realized that if he was left to himself, and prison could be a very kind of a boring sort of place, you know, you gotta make
Sure.
activities, walk around the yard, or go work out, or whatever, you know, or go to the library, make yourself. So if you just kind of stay lost with your thoughts, I tell people in counseling the default for humans because of sin, we know, is towards negative.
Yeah.
So if we generally stay with our thoughts are going to always go towards the negative, and then of course Satan loves to help
Oh,
kind of
he'll
move that along,
hammer
because
it.
that will
Yeah.
the kingdom of darkness will help move that along. So you have to actively be a better self counselor. I tell people that healthy people are not healthy people. They just have a good inner counselor.
Sure.
So we when we're healthy, our inner counselor is speaking good things into our life when our mind is going off to the negative. So if we're going to
So let me
be
let me ask you
worried,
this: how does one change negative self-talk? Because I mean, there's sometimes in life that you'll get to the place where you're saying things to yourself in your head that you wouldn't say to your worst enemy. So how do you change that negative self-talk?
well, I think the first thing is that I'm going to say this about thoughts and feelings, because I say this about feelings all the time. Okay, so thoughts, feelings are real, but they're not reality. Okay, I say this to kids
Okay.
all the time. Feelings are real, but they're not reality. And what I mean by that is, yes, you are feeling depressed right now. That's real, okay?
Okay.
But because you're feeling depressed doesn't mean that's your life reality. Because, for the
Oh,
kids who are like in juvenile detention, or for example, just because they're feeling depressed doesn't mean that everything they're thinking and they're feeling along those depressions
it's
is really totally what's
true.
going on or true. And quite
Yeah.
frankly, it would change very quickly. Let's say that, Dr. Glasser from Reality Therapy many years ago always said that, feelings are more, we say we don't control our feelings, but we have a certain amount of control over them, because he would say, if you were depressed today, super depressed, and all of a sudden you heard that you were going to win $1 million, you just got inherited $1 million or something,
Yeah. Yeah.
except for somebody who's deeply biologically clinically depressed, most people would cheer up after that.
Situationally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
situational
That's
depression,
it. Yeah.
you would instantly, and you just heard something. Okay, you just got news. You got a
Yeah. Nothing
change
else
of
changed but a
perspective.
sentence.
Right, yeah, nothing else changed but a sentence, and all of a sudden now you're happy. So I know that doesn't always apply, because I believe some people would still be depressed even after that, but that's some deeper
So,
stuff going
so
on.
do you
But
think then? Do you think then that it's a big thing then is the story which we tell ourselves? So if I tell myself, look, if somebody cuts me off in traffic, I tell myself one of two stories about the situation. Either I tell myself a story that the guy in that car is a jerk and trying to kill me, or I tell myself a story that maybe that guy just got news that one of his kids is in the hospital and he's got to make his way there.
right,
So depending on what my story was, let me turn my walkie-talkie down a little bit here. So my story, if I am telling myself the wrong story, I get a wrong outcome in my life. Could you expand on that a little
oh,
bit?
beautiful. Okay, so I agree, and I think that that yes, the inner counselor needs to be writing and rewriting the stories in our lives to include the rest of the story, because most of the time depression is about taking some very limited thinking. Okay, so for example, like you said, it's taken some very limited evidence and then making all the conclusion based on that, and not taking um, extra information, taking all the other possibilities in there to throw in there to help to mitigate the circumstances or what's going on. So that's a great example there. The story we tell ourselves is vital. And then also, though, I think behind the story, and that is something that we need to be explored even more there, that idea of storytelling, because the stories
Good.
we tell ourselves are certainly what changes everything. But here's the other problem, is that every voice in our head, here's the problem, we every time our thoughts start happening, the danger is believing that those thoughts are us. Okay, and how do
Right.
I say that? So I tell the kids and adults, but I would say to them, though, for example, you um you have this thought that life is bad, and you're telling yourself a bad story, and you think that's you, and you think that's your life, when really
Right.
I use the term the depression monster or ghost sort of speaking into your life.
Sure.
You know, now
Sure.
in our opinion, you know, I mean, we would both agree that there's even a certain amount of kingdom of darkness, satanic influence, maybe
Oh, absolutely.
entering into some of
Yeah.
those thoughts too. But you know, for most people, you know, just an easy illustration would be, so not only what story is being are you telling, but who do you believe is telling the story? If you
Yeah.
believe you're telling you that story in the sense that it's
Sure.
your reality, as opposed to no, that is depression speaking in your life. You know, if you can
Wow.
identify it as depression or anxiety or negative thoughts and go, okay, wait a minute, that's kind of that depression or that jealousy or that whatever you want name you want to give it, you know,
But that's
some
powerful, the name. So maybe if I hear that voice in my head and I say, "Hello, depression. I see you there.
right,
I see what you're trying to do."
right,
And sort of, you know what I mean, and kind of answer back against it, and then maybe that helps to defeat the power of it. Because if we just let the voice go unchecked, then it becomes more and more oppressive.
right,
Does that make sense?
absolutely. And I think if you name it, if you name it, then that helps to in a sense to conquer it. So I would agree with that. I know that kind of sounds silly, but yeah, if you go, okay, that's kind of depression speaking there. They're only, you know, depression is only talking the negative. You know, life is, you know, life may be bad right now, but it doesn't mean it's going to always going to be this way. You know, and I start, you're right, if I name it as kind of that and I don't,
Oh, that's
you got to
jealousy,
not
that's
give it
anger.
right.
Yeah, you say it, and it isn't just to be depression. That's, oh, I see you, jealousy, oh, insecurity. Welcome to the conversation. Yes, I see you trying to make me belittle myself, and then you kind of go, and then maybe you can kind of laugh it off or see it as something that's passing, like mentally, maybe if you could see a cloud that comes and obscures the sun for a moment, and you know the cloud's not going to stay obscuring the sun, it's going to pass by, so you sort of mentally picture, well, that's depression is here, it's a thing, but it's going, it's not going to stay, it's not permanent. I'm not inviting it to be a permanent house guest or to live with me for the rest of my life. It's passing, and I watch it go.
Right. And then here, listen. So this just came, you know, when we talk, all the thoughts pop into my mind. What you're having faith in the story, whether the story is good or bad. You're having
Oh,
faith in the story.
powerful.
And that thought just kind of came in my mind. I have to believe the story in order for it to affect my life and kind of color the glasses, you know. And so I think
How do I
understanding
how
that the
do I
thought is not necessarily mine or I should
the
necessarily own it,
map
you know.
the map isn't the territory, which is what you're saying. The map isn't the territory. So if I have a map of Idaho, it's not Idaho. It's a representation of Idaho.
Right,
And
right,
so your story that you're telling yourself isn't reality. It's your story of reality. But how do we develop the belief in, like you're talking about, in the good story? So say I have two competing stories. One makes me depressed and angry, the other one makes me empowered and peaceful. How do I teach myself to believe the good story?
wow. I I I don't know. I think that probably in my life, and everybody's had their crises, I just got so miserable that you begin, first of all, you got to begin the search for the idea that you want to fix stuff.
Okay.
So I think that number one, there obviously has to be, I know that's kind of probably blind spider monkey obvious, but you got to have a desire to fix your thinking. Some people don't want to fix their thinking. No, number
Right.
one, they believe they're thinking even if it's negative, but they're not motivated yet to go, okay, I don't care what it takes. I got to figure out a new way to deal with this because this is driving me nuts. I can't live like this, you know. I
So
can't live in this
necessity
despair.
helps you believe the news story.
Right, right.
Necessity
So that
makes
you
you
begin to look
okay.
around for metaphors, because we're really talking about metaphors here. We're talking about metaphors to help us be able to understand our
Cope with life.
thinking and use
Right.
those
Okay.
to, you know. So you got to. I think there has to be a desire to do it, and then I think we have to. We have to. I've told people this, and I had to do this in my life. Is you must question every thought.
Yes.
So every
Yes.
you got to develop the habit of pretty much questioning everything that goes through your mind, because a lot of those negative ghosts and demons and monsters of thinking that are harmful tend to just kind of slip in there as our own. As I said, this is me, this is my reality. And if you don't question every thought, you begin to have faith in the thinking, and then you're believing you're thinking. Okay.
They call it
So,
ants. One author calls it ants, automatic negative thinking.
right.
And they're these little automatic negative thinking programs that we run in our mind and our life all the time, and it messes us up. So you're saying we have to interrogate the ants. We got to interrogate the ants and make sure that we dismantle the logic behind it and the emotional impact of it by interrogating it, kind of.
Right,
Is that
right. And
right?
and to take a simple principle, let's say somebody's deeply in debt. Okay, let's say they're
Right.
bankruptcy level in debt. So, yeah, so their mind says to them, they've been struggling with this, trying to fix it, struggling with it, trying to fix it, don't know what to do. And their mind says to them, I'm never getting out of debt. This is never going to get fixed. Okay, now that's a simple one. We do that kind of stuff all the time. So the good inner counselor has to question that thought. So humans, because of our spirit, I believe, we have the ability to think about our thinking. So animals can
Okay.
think, but humans can
But we
think
think
about their
about
thinking.
things.
And we can make, like Dr. Glasser said years ago, we can make moral judgments about our behavior. So,
Yeah.
of whether or not that behavior is good, bad, right and wrong, healthy, unhealthy, whatever. So, what we do is that we have to we have to be questioning every thought, because unfortunately, especially if we're used to the habit of negative thinking, we will accept everything that comes across our brain without doing the work of vetting it. I like that term they use now a
Okay.
lot in
That's a good term. Yeah.
of vetting it and going, okay, does this pass the muster of, well, for us as Christians, Philippians, where it talks about whatever is true and honest and of good report. And
Okay.
you'll have to forgive me. You're
That's a
better. You can
good
tell me the
filter.
passage there in Philippians chapter 3, I believe, or chapter 4. Chapter
It's
4.
chapter 4. It's
Yeah,
4, 8, 8, 9.
yeah, 4,
Yeah.
8, 9. So,
Yeah.
that does it pass the muster of what is healthy to me? Is that really true? Well, there's people who have been bankrupt 5 times and became
Sure.
millionaires. So it's not
Sure.
necessarily true that I am going to be in debt for the rest of my life and it's never going to get any better. And it's
And
not, now
another way that
maybe,
you
but
can interrogate it, another way that you can immediately interrogate it is notice the phrase that you use. So the negative phrase that we use is I'm always going to be broke.
right,
I'll never get out of this. And so you ask the question of those two words, will you always be broke? Is it true that you will never get, and so
right.
because always and never are such extreme phrases that once you realize the silliness of that, that then you can even reuse the phrase, say, well, it is true that I am broke right now, but I won't always be broke. And so once you interrogate the language that that voice is using, even the language can defeat the negative thought process if you once you begin to dismantle it.
Right. And there's certain things that, you're right, that I think certain phrases that certainly our inner counselor should catch like that. So phrases that are just not reality, okay?
Yeah.
They're not reality. They're, the always or never, those kind of statements. Another two bad ones that catch immediately is what ifs. Future tense creates anxiety. Any what if statement is
Right.
probably a negative one that needs to be rejected. What if?
Right.
And the other ones is the I shoulda. Now,
Yeah.
now,
Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
right now, what if is good, because if you're going to, we walk around in, we spend a lot of time in the woods. Okay,
Right.
my wife and I, my youngest daughter. I mean, we spend a lot of times in the woods. I should probably think, what if, there's poisonous snakes around here. So what if I run into one? So there's some what ifs that are just, thinking in the future for wisdom. Okay, but most of the
Yeah.
time the what ifs and the I should haves are good too. We need to learn from our past to know what I should have
Sure.
done so that I make better decisions in the future. But those both of those statements are always bad ones most of the time because they
Yeah.
are harmful in that we assume that the what ifs are going to happen and we assume that I should have limit me with the inability to ever fix it.
They
So
make you weak.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't pick the right job. That I did that. I permanently damaged myself. Well, quite frankly, the truth is that yeah, anybody in their right mind would go back and make many changes in their past. Uh, but 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 that doesn't mean but you can't change the past. You can only learn from the past.
Right. Right.
So you can those two statements are almost always not a positive one. They're almost always the brain trying to talk negativity and negative thinking and in my opinion, almost often a little bit of demonic influence thinking
Sure.
into our mind because Satan is working to try to, or the kingdom of darkness is working to try to destroy us through our own thinking that's
Hey,
going
hey,
on.
buddy, I'm gonna have to wrap up. Can you say a prayer for us for anybody that's experiencing these automatic negative thoughts that God would help them to disrupt those and bring thoughts of peace and joy? Can you pray for that as we close out?
Absolutely. I deal with myself and other people all the time that I've learned some principles we have, but we've been there. I've been there. And
Sure,
so,
me too.
and I have people in my life and relatives and friends that are going through this kind of stuff. And I am sympathetic to both sympathetic and empathetic to their cause, and
Yes,
what they're
yes,
going through. So, yeah, Lord, I thank you so much for your many, many blessings. And I thank you so much for my brother. I thank you so much, Lord, for what you have taught me, what he's taught me over the years, what we've learned. I pray, Lord, for anybody out there that is struggling with depression and anxiety,
yes,
which are probably two of the biggest things that I hardly know a person
yes,
that
Father
isn't,
God.
in today's time, that isn't struggling with one or both of those. I ask you, God, that you would help them and give them grace and wisdom to understand that you have an
Yes,
abundant life for them in a spiritual sense and joy for them regardless of their circumstances, if we just follow your principles and we obey you and we surrender to you. And I ask you, God, that you would just give them grace and mercy and deliver them from the kind of spiritual attacks of the kingdom of darkness. Lord, help us, God, to be effective for you in our ministries as we minister to others. In Jesus' name, amen.
amen. Hey, thanks, buddy. It's been good.
God
We're going to
bless
do
you.
this more often now that we know how to do
Yes.
it. And I love you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your insights and wisdom. It's been a big help to me. You've been a wonderful counsel for me over the years, and I'm thankful for it. So
Same
you have a
here.
great
Same
day.
here.
Remember, the rest
You
of our
too.
life's going to be the rest of our life's
Best of
going to
our
be the
life.
best
Best
of
of
our
our
lives.
life.
All right. Hey, buddy, you
God
have a
bless you.
great day,
I love
man.
you. You take
God bless
care.
you, bud. Love you
Bye.
too. Bye.